Francis O'Keefe here for Go Guitar Lessons. Today we're going to be taking a look at the DNA of bar chords. Now, we're not actually going to break down how to play a bar chord. That's a different video where we look at exactly how to lay your finger, what hand position to use, and then of course tips and tricks to play a bar chord better. So we're not doing that in this video. We're taking a look at where bar chords come from, and specifically we're taking a look at something called the CAGED system, and that is the CAGED system. It's going to help you to be able to play chords in multiple places on the neck. It's also going to help you understand what's happening when you're using a capo, and it's going to actually help you a lot in terms of arpeggios across the neck. So let's break it down. Now, the first thing we have to look at is the CAGED system itself. What is it? It has a system of rules, and what are they? So the CAGED system works like this. If we have a C major chord, the C major chord I'm playing now is an open chord. So what that means is that there are open strings in the chord. So we have a G string that's open, and we have a high E string that is open. And then of course the other ones are fretted by my fingers. So what the CAGED system tells us is that we can move this chord up, but we have to move the open strings equally up. So if I move the C major chord by 2, so 1, 2, I also have to take the open strings and move them up by 2. So since they were 0, 2 plus 0 is 2, that means I have to cover them on the second fret. So we do that by doing a bar, okay? My pinky finger comes in and it helps to fret what was the C shape. My index finger is freed up to actually cover the those two strings. This is what we end up with. Now, what is that? Okay, so two things we have to look at. This is a chord type that is the same as a C major. So what do I mean? If C major is a major chord type, well, as long as we follow the rules of the CAGED system, this one is also going to be a major chord type. Okay? And the second thing we have to look at is the root note. What note is that? Well, this is actually a D note. So that makes this chord a D major chord. And now that the shape is already barred, it's in a bar chord shape, it's movable now. I can move this and have E major, F major, G major, and of course A major. Now, you might be telling yourself that you've never seen this chord before and it's probably not very popular. Well, it's not that popular, but it has been used in some famous songs. Here's an example. So this chord shape is used, okay? Not as much as the other bar chords we're going to go over. So let's look at another example. Let's look at something that's more popular. Let's take an E major chord. We're going to use the rules of the CAGED system, okay, to move that into a bar chord. So rule number 1, we can move that anywhere we want, but we have to move the open strings with it. So say I move it up to here on 7. So that's a movement of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 higher. Okay, so I moved it by 5. That means the open strings from the E major chord, which is E, B, and the high E string, have to be moved up by 5 as well, and that puts them on the 5th fret. And we end up with this shape here. Now this shape, if you've ever played bar chords, you'll definitely recognize it because it's very popular. And it comes from using the CAGED system on an E major chord. Okay. The same thing works for minor chords. If I caged the E minor chord, we would end up with this shape. So in this position, that's an A minor chord, G minor. And then of course, just by adding the middle finger back down on the G string, it brings the chord back to major. So we have G major, G minor. We can do the same thing for all chord types. Even D minor, for example, I can move that up by 2. We have to figure out how to cover all the necessary strings. In that case, we're only bringing one open string up, and that's the D string, because everything else is fretted. We move it by 1, 2, that means the D string has to go up by 2. Let's move a D7 chord. 1, 2. Let's move a C major 7 chord. Here's C major 7. Let's move it up by 1, 2, 3, 4. We end up with this. We can even move a G chord, but it has to be this 3-finger G chord. It can't be this 4-finger G chord. It has to be a 3-finger G chord. And this is a real nasty one to play. This is what it looks like. So we move that G chord up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means all of the open strings have to move up by 5 as well, and we end up with this. Now, playing a chord like that is a huge pain in the ass. Okay, this one is not very popular because of how complicated it is to play. Now, this is where capos come in. So instead of holding my finger on these 3 notes here, on the D, G, and B, what I can do is I can give that job to the capo. Now I don't have to bar that anymore. The capo's doing the barring for me. I can just play the G shape. What chord is this? This is an important question. A lot of people would say it's a G, but it's not. It's a G shape. In fact, this is a C major chord. Why is it a C major chord? Because this is a C note, making it a C-type chord, and G is a major chord type. So as long as we use the proper rules of the CAGED system, we maintain the chord quality, so that ends up being major. So this is an important lesson when it comes to capos, because a lot of people have an idea that what the capo does is it actually moves the notes around on the strings, but it doesn't do that. It's just an extra finger that holds a fret for you, or holds some notes down, and allows you to play these chords with ease. Without the capo, I can still play this chord. The only problem is that we have to do this. And getting to that chord can take a lot longer than this one. So we use the capo, we can easily get to that chord now without having a finger cover there. All of that can be played without a capo, but is way more complicated without it. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing that the CAGED system can help us out with. The CAGED system can help us out with moving arpeggios around, okay? Or even finding arpeggios. So let's go back to our example of the C major chord. If I move this up by 2, 1, 2, I apply the rules of the CAGED system, I end up with this chord, which is now a D major. We can turn this into an easy arpeggio. Because an arpeggio is just taking the notes of a chord and playing them one at a time, well, we just do that. There's a D major arpeggio. And a very popular one that is used quite a bit. We can do that with any of the chord types that we move around. If I move around a D minor chord type, say I move it up by 2, here is the CAGED system version of it. Well, let's just play the notes one at a time. Now, using this fingering might not be that comfortable, so we can use any fingers that we want. Or we can actually just play 3 notes of the chord, because it's a triad chord. It's 3 notes. We have 4 here, so that means one of them is a duplicate. So we can just do this. We we don't need to hit that bass note. So that means that if that's an E minor arpeggio, here's an F arpeggio, here's a G minor, I meant F minor, G minor, A minor, B minor, and C minor, and back to D minor. So every single chord type can be moved and easily made into an arpeggio, and just by having that little trick of connecting the arpeggios to the chords to the CAGED system is very powerful. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to experiment with it. Take chords that I didn't use as an example and see if they work. Like an A7, for example. Let's move that up by 1, 2, 3. Well, remember the rules of the CAGED system. Make sure that you know and understand all of the notes that are open. 1, 2, 3 strings are open. So 1, 2, 3. We have to bring those up by 3. Here is an A7 that's caged, and it's no longer an A7. Now it is a C7. So, if you have any questions, just please leave it in the comments. I hope the video helped you out with learning the CAGED system. It is by no means a definitive video on the CAGED system. We can do more and we can go more in depth. The CAGED system can be used to move scales around as well. If you're familiar with this open C major scale, well, we can take that and move it. And we can actually use the CAGED system in reverse as well. We can take bar chords, move them to the open position. We can take scales and move them to the open position, etc. So if you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. I am doing videos twice a week now, and we cover a wide variety of topics. Thanks, I'll see you in the next video.